I have my ups and downs, just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
I can be hard to figure out.
And I like my privacy.
I don't want you looking over my shoulder all the time.
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual...
Acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason.
Or getting really mad.
Not able to sleep, or sleeping too much.
Shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away.
Acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late.
Suddenly not doing stuff he used to love.
Or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed.
Not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself.
It happens. More than you think. More than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said something.
I wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, they want somebody to ask.
They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like, you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing herself is to ask, are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes,
Well, here's what you don't say.
That's crazy.
Don't be such a drama queen.
you're making too much of this.
That boy's not worth killing
Yourself.
over.
That's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention.
You're not going to kill yourself.
What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad.
How can I help?
We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
A lot of people think about killing themselves. Adults and kids.
most of them never try it, but some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead.
I can't live with
I'm
this.
gonna kill myself,
Take her seriously. Find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure.
But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself.
Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
but don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts.
Make a list together, right then. 3, 4, 5 names.
Put a suicide hotline number on there too.
Have him keep that list in his wallet, so he always knows where to turn.
Make sure your home is safe.
If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. The bullets, too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to.
We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask.
Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut.
Because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference.
All the difference.
In your kid's life.
Parents, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Debbie Lewis, the Suicide Prevention Specialist for Utah State Office of Education. This position was mandated by Utah State legislators in an increased effort to identify the issues, determine appropriate preventative strategies, and reduce the number of suicides in our state. In a moment, you will see an important video that was prepared for all educators working with youth. As I assume my new position, I believe it is critical to include parents in any prevention effort. You are the first influence on your child's life. You know your children, their abilities, their characteristics, and their uniqueness. You are key in helping us identify when your child or a child you know begins to struggle. With your perspective of your individual child and the school's ability to see your child interact in a group, essential warning signs can be discovered. Together as a team, we parents and educators will strive to eliminate suicide among our youth.
Students afraid to come to school because they are teased. Girls rejected because they're just not the right size. Boys laughed at because they're not strong enough. Students who struggle with sexual orientation. Just a few of the reasons students might avoid coming to school, drop out, or worse, attempt or complete suicide. Yet all of these students want a safe place in school to learn, grow, establish healthy relationships, and achieve success. Hello, I'm Gail Threet from Jordan School District.
I'm Todd Kornberg from Copper Hills High School.
I am Jerry Payne, counselor at Riverton High School.
I am Taryn Aiken, chair for the Utah chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
I am Lori Jones, comprehensive counseling and guidance coordinator for Canyon School District.
I am Natasha Tebbs, school counselor at Cedar High School.
I am Sam Walsh, school social worker, Park City High School.
I am Kim Myers, Prevention by Design program manager with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Utah.
I'm Amy Bueller with the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health and co-chair of the State Suicide Prevention Coalition, and this is your Utah Suicide Prevention Training.
As educators, the compelling question is, well, why should I care about suicide prevention? I teach math, I teach science, I teach language arts or any other subject. In a few moments, you will see a video directly addressing the life-changing impact that teachers, counselors, and administrators have on students in Utah.
Prior to watching the video, we want you to know the Utah statistics on teenage suicides in Utah and what that means to you as an educator. The following statistics are reported by the Utah Medical Examiner's Office. 19 students died by suicide in 2011. The following statistics are for Utah students ages 15 through 19 in 2011. 43,550, which is 26.52% of Utah students, felt sad or hopelessness for an extended period of time. 23,000, or 14% of students in Utah, seriously considered suicide. 19,720, 12% of students, made a plan for suicide in the last year. 11,503, 7% of students, attempted suicide. Over 300 youth received medical assistance for attempted suicide. We want this to be the most impactful 2 hours for you as an educator. We want you to capture the vision of every child, every day, every opportunity to change a life.
What you will see next is an informative video entitled More Than Sad, produced by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
You may be asking yourself why you should learn about the signs and symptoms of various mental disorders that indicate that a student may be suicidal. The answer is because, as a teacher, you have the unique opportunity to observe behavioral changes in your students that others may not notice. The teachers in this film will share their stories of referring students for help. We encourage you to familiarize yourself with your school's policies regarding student referrals. If you notice any of the symptoms outlined in this film in one of your students, speak to him or her as well as to the school counselor. By referring a student for evaluation, you are helping him or her to get the help that he or she needs. You may even save a life. "32,000 people in the U.S. die by suicide each year. It's the third leading cause of death for young people 10 to 19 years of age. There are many risk factors for suicide. However, over 90% of young people who die by suicide are suffering from a mental health problem. There are several mental disorders that put young people at risk for suicide, and these are major depression, bipolar disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, drug and alcohol abuse, and conduct disorder. Children who have a family history of mental disorders are at a greater risk for suicide.
Your teacher, she said you've been missing school. And when you do show up, you often seem unprepared. Lana, that's so unlike you. What's going on?
So one of the things that you're looking for if you have concern that a teenager may have major depression, there's a change in what the young person usually did. Those changes can be in various different areas of their life simultaneously. So one area would be how they're doing in school. You may actually see a change in their grades. A child that had been getting A's or B's or C's are now getting a significant grade change of like D's and F's. You may also notice changes in how the teenager is interacting with their peers. So you may notice that they're not sitting with their usual group of friends at lunchtime that they normally would hang out with, or they seem to be isolating themselves more, choosing not to join in with the groups of kids to talk about things or doing after-school activities. The teenager may decide not to participate in a usual sport or an after-school activity that they had usually enjoyed.
There was a student that I had, she was very athletic. You know, she was involved in all the sports that we offered, basketball player, softball player, wanted to run track. And one day she just said that she wasn't interested in doing that anymore. And I asked her, you know, what's going on? This doesn't sound like you. This is not the girl that I know. You know, this is not my student. And the answer was kind of like, nothing. No, I don't want to talk about it. So what I did was I referred her to the guidance counselor. She, you know, started seeing the guidance counselor on a regular basis, and 3 or 4 months after, you know, me saying something to her initially, like I noticed that there's something wrong, she came to me and said, thank you for, you know, saying something to me. And I asked her, you know, is there anything you want to talk about? She said, no, it's nothing I want to talk about. I have some problems at home, but, you know, thank you. And my response was, you know, I just want you to know that I know you. You know, you're my student, and, you know, I've gotten to know you, and I'm concerned. That was a really, really good moment for me.
One of the things that can be confusing is that in school, a young person on the one hand could look more sad, depressed, unhappy, not participating in class. On the other hand, you could have a student who is looking very cranky and irritable and being very difficult and very oppositional. And you might not think that that is depression, but it could be, and it's just something to keep in mind. So there's some physical changes that can occur for a teenager suffering from depression. A teacher may notice a young person who's not eating their lunch. They may come with their lunch every day, and they actually don't even touch it. The other opposite can occur as well. Some young people, when they get depression, start overeating. They actually crave carbohydrates. They eat a lot more candy and junk food. Other types of physical symptoms, the young person may be complaining of feeling tired a lot of the time, having low energy, feeling like they can't pick themselves up and go. They may find it very hard to fall asleep at night, stay asleep, may find themselves waking up really early, or they're tossing and turning through the night, so they're not feeling rested when they get up in the morning. And when they come into school, they may actually have real deep dark circles on their eyes and really look really, exhausted. So another thing to be aware of is to really listen for children who have self-esteem issues. And one way you can notice that is by various comments that the teenager may make about themselves, such as, I'm not worth anything, I can't do anything right, I don't like myself. While you are working with young people and during the school year, they may be working on various projects, whether it's writing poems or doing artwork or writing short stories, to look for themes that seem very dark, sad, talking about life not worth living, a lot of themes about death, dying, people dying around them, feelings of hopelessness or worthlessness that comes through that writing.
I would see poetry or a free writing that would say, everybody sucks, I hate everything, why is the world so unfair, why am I treated this way, how can she go out with someone else, how can he treat me this way. Some of the words I would pay attention to would be I hate, anger. What is very important to track the behavior. What I do is I write down the observable behaviors of a student. If a student is depressed and does not get their work done, just keep a log of that. I write it down, I make a mental note, I just keep track of that, because if that behavior changes, that tells me that that student might have some sign of depression.
Personally, I have a rule of thumb. Anytime that behavior seems contrary to a pattern that you've been watching for longer than 2 to 3 weeks, then you ought to start thinking, you ought to start taking action. But in my case, I had looked at Will almost physically change. He's a tall, lanky kid, and he began to shrink. Everything retreated as though he were underwater, and it became so visible and such a visceral reaction that I thought, there is something wrong with my child.
There are chemicals in the brain that help the different parts of the brain communicate with each other. If the chemicals get out of balance, this communication can break down and lead to depression. Depressed brains show a decrease in serotonin transporter levels in specific areas of the brain. Medication works to reset the brain's chemistry and is generally used for 6 to 12 months.
You know, as much as I know about this illness, it was very hard for me to come to terms with the fact that my son was depressed. He was getting ready for exams, and I found him. He was lying in his room, papers scattered all over the place, and he was in tears. And I said, what's going on? And he said, I just can't do this anymore. And suddenly it hit me that this child was depressed, that my son was depressed. We have a family history of depression. I suffer from depression myself. I should be sharper about this. And I said, sweetie, I think I know what is wrong here. I think you are depressed, and I know this. I know this illness. We will get you help. We will make sure that we do something about this. You do not have to feel this way.
So another disorder to be aware of that puts a teenager at heightened risk is bipolar disorder. This is a disorder that has two different, in a sense, mood states. One which is like major depression, where the young person has low energy, inability to get out of bed, get things done, poor concentration, may report being irritable, tired, not being able to do things as they used to. And that mood can shift and change to a period of time where they have an elevation of their mood. They feel extremely happy, very energized. They have a decreased need of sleep or no need for sleep at all. They actually may feel that their thoughts are racing, they're talking very fast. People around them may feel that they're not actually making sense. They also may change in the way that they dress. They may all of a sudden be dressing more provocatively than what was normal for them. They may actually show very poor decision-making ability. So they may, as an example, take their parents' car and take off with it without telling them, getting a speeding ticket, running red lights, going places where they're not supposed to go. They may engage in risky sexual behavior.
It was my first year teaching, and I was teaching 7th grade. I had several students who had been told, were the rambunctious 6th graders who were coming in, and I was supposed to look out for them. One of those students ended up, I realized, being very, very smart. He had days when he was extremely out of control, laughing at everything, running around the classroom, being, again, what many people would say, a 7th grade boy who was kind of just going through hormonal shifts. And it wasn't until the end of the year when there was an incident at a softball practice when someone did something extremely out of the ordinary, vandalizing the school. And when I did find out it was this student, I was immediately taken aback, and I called his mother, and she volunteered before I even told her about the incident that he had been diagnosed as bipolar. And it made me realize that so many of the things that I saw in my classroom and so many of the things that we see in our classrooms, we can't just label as typical behavior, because a student that is being a typical 7th grader might actually be dealing with something that's much more serious, such as having a bipolar disorder diagnosis.
generalized anxiety disorder. This is a disorder where the young person is worrying about many things in multiple areas of their life. Now, we all have worries and we all have anxiety, but this is worry that's excessive to the average person's experience of worry. So, for example, you could have a student who is an A student or a B student who often does very well and appears to be doing very well, but who internally really feels that they're constantly worrying that they're going to fail, that they're not going to get it right. These are often young people who are perfectionistic. They're often doing well in multiple areas of their life. They may be the captain of this particular sports team. They may seem like they have lots of friends, but inside they're constantly very hard on themselves and feeling like they're not doing a good enough job.
Everyone thinks that I'm so perfect and that it all comes easy for me, but it doesn't. I worry about everything. I worry about school stuff. I worry about tests. I worry about games. It really does get me down.
So when you have a student who is worried in multiple areas of their lives, and this worry seems to be continuous and getting in their way and fully enjoying all the things that they're involved in, other symptoms that are related to this and help make this diagnosis are a series of physical symptoms. And they can have, from anywhere from 1 to 3 of these symptoms. They may be experiencing difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, or waking up earlier than they need to be. They may also feel very tired during the day. They may also feel that they're having trouble concentrating, and then also have a feeling of feeling tense all the time. So another illness that can put a teenager at risk for suicide is drug and alcohol abuse. One of the things that can happen is when a young person is suffering from many of the disorders that I've already discussed, is that they may actually utilize alcohol or drugs to help cope with the symptoms that they're experiencing. So a young person who's anxious and feels very uncomfortable in social situations may actually use alcohol to help relax themselves and try to cope with what's going on with them. A depressed teenager might think, geez, if I just smoked a little marijuana, maybe that way I'd feel a little bit better, even though we know that all these type of coping strategies are not going to work.
Yeah. That sounds like a good idea.
Yes. Watch it, man.
Alcohol and drug dependence can actually lead a teenager to have decreased control over their thinking and their behaviors and actions, and they actually end up, unfortunately, making a poor decision, or in that moment of feeling so awful, actually making a suicide attempt. Another disorder that put teenagers at risk for suicide is conduct disorder. Teenagers who have this disorder are often not liked and very hard to reach. These are young people who may be involved with stealing, with getting into fights with their peers, with lying, with running away from home, not attending school. They can be physically aggressive and they can be sexually aggressive. They can often be considered the classroom bully. They use intimidation when they interact with other people. They can be very defiant and oppositional and can be very difficult to manage in the classroom.
You find a lot in just the tone, their speaking tone. Being all of a sudden, not so much being disrespectful of cursing at a teacher, but just the way they interact with each other and how they interact with you as an authority figure. You can see very early on the signs of a student that starts to shift before it gets to the point that they're really, in the abyss and they're trying to claw their way out. Because I really think that they want someone to see that and to sit down and, as I said before, listen. Okay, what's up? I will validate anything you're saying because I was a kid too, so I know that it hurts.
When a young person starts thinking that life's not worth living, they're better off dead than alive, they may actually make a suicide attempt. So young people are at an increased risk for suicide once they've had a suicide attempt in their life. They're also at increased risk if there's a family history of there being a suicide attempt or a completed suicide. There are situational factors that can heighten a teenager's risk for suicide, such as if there's a divorce in the family, a breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, sexual or physical abuse at home, a very critical family situation, if there's a death of a loved one that was very close to the student. Bullying, and that can be face-to-face bullying or bullying that's experienced through the internet.
And those girls sent my email to everyone in school. Everyone knew about it. I started getting emails from everyone in school saying, "Did you really think Alex would like you?" How could I have believed it?
Another group that may be at heightened risk is gay and lesbian teens, as well as those that are questioning their sexuality. Certain environmental factors can contribute to issues with suicide, such as if there are firearms in the home. When a suicide does occur in one particular community, there can be what we call a contagion effect, whereby this occurring in one community can actually affect another troubled youth to actually consider suicide as an option for themselves. So now that you've learned about some of the risk factors and causes that can lead to suicide, there are some imminent signs that you should be aware of, so that if you have a student who's talking about suicide, who's talking about life's not worth living, who is writing about very sad, gloomy topics, this is a student that you really should reach out and try to help. One symptom that you may not see often is a symptom called psychosis. And that's when a young person may be hearing voices that are not there, seeing things that are not there, and may be acting in a very bizarre manner. There's another student who really requires urgent intervention, who is also maybe at increased risk for a suicide attempt and really needs help as soon as possible.
What I try to do is to get them open to talk about it, because I know when something's wrong. I might bring it to the attention of my principal, and maybe we need to get the parent in to see if we all could, sit at the table and help. A word to the wise for all educators and teachers is be more hands-on with the kids.
Our teachers are really on the front lines here. For the most part, they see more of our children than we do. And they certainly see them in a dimension that we don't. Oftentimes, particularly if you have a child who's depressed, that kid comes home, goes upstairs, shuts the door. There's minimal interaction at dinner. Whenever you can manage to get them out, you get very little exchange. And as I say, trying to discern what is, normal and what is aberrant behavior is very difficult. So our teachers are likely to be able to see, before we do oftentimes, an indicator of hopelessness, and that's really what we're looking for.
Well, one thing that I would like to advise teachers and anyone that's working with young people is not to necessarily worry about, am I getting the right number of symptoms? Has it been lasting for the long, do I have the time period correct? I just think if it's enough that you're thinking about it and you're noticing a combination of symptoms that really seem to be getting in the way of this young person's life, really think about getting that young person help, whether it is to seek out the guidance counselor, if you know the parents and you feel comfortable, bringing it to the parents' attention. I would say have a low threshold in reaching out to that teenager and asking them, are you okay? Do you think anything's changed for you? Do you need any help with anything? And that could really make a big difference for that teenager.
Now that you have watched the video, I'd like to take you through a short quiz. Since the 1990s, suicide rates have A, decreased, B, increased, C, increased and leveled off, or D, stayed the same. The answer is B, they have increased. Most suicides are the fatal outcome of A, negative life events, B, inherited characteristics, C, vulnerability to stress, D, mental disorders. The answer is D, mental disorders. In order to be diagnosed with major depression, symptoms need to last a minimum of the following: A, 1 week, B, 2 weeks, C, 2 months, or D, 6 months. The answer is B, 2 weeks. Which mental disorder is more common in girls than boys? A, depression, B, anxiety disorder, C, eating disorder, or D, all of the above? The answer is D, all of the above. A teacher's responsibility toward a student who shows signs of depression or suicidal thoughts is A, listening and counseling, B, questioning and advising, C, identifying and referring, or D, all of the above? The answer is C, identifying and referring. Teachers can play a role in preventing suicide by A, referring at-risk students to appropriate help, B, helping students learn, C, supporting programs in school and community that reduce risk, or D, all of the above? The answer is D, all of the above.
School is a positive connection for students who are experiencing mental distress, family dysfunction, or who are isolated from peers. It takes time and courage to reach out to students on a personal level, but your interest can be a lifeline to a child. Warning signs of suicide are often subtle and require a team of caring individuals to help watch out for concerning behaviors. The following warning signs may indicate that a student is at high risk for suicide. The risk is greater if a behavior is new or has increased and it is related to a painful event, loss, or change. Talking about wanting to die or kill oneself. Looking for a method to harm oneself, such as searching online or buying a weapon. Feelings of hopelessness or lacking a reason to live. Talking about feeling trapped or being in pain. Talking about being a burden to others. Increase in drug or alcohol use. Engaging in self-harm or injurious behavior may be a sign. Anxiety or agitation. Behaving recklessly. Sleeping too little or too much. Withdrawing or feeling isolated. Showing rage or talking about seeking revenge. Displaying extreme mood swings. Giving away possessions.
Educators, we know that most of you are not counselors or school psychologists, but you are the front lines for helping students. If you know or suspect that a student is in danger of hurting him or herself, please take immediate action by referring to the school administrator, school counselor, resource officer, school social worker, or school psychologist. It is important that you know the steps to follow in your school. If you have any doubts, please bring the topic up for discussion in a staff meeting. Ignoring the issue of suicide will not make it go away. Your willingness to speak up may save a life. Please discuss with your building administrator the proper procedure and protocol for assisting a student in immediate need at your school.
Obviously, each school district and individual school will have particular protocols in place as to how to deal with students who have been referred to the administration, school counselor, or school psychologist. It is important to know what happens when a staff member makes a referral regarding a student that is showing one or more of the warning signs that might put them at risk. For counselors, when a referral is made, they contact the student immediately and visit with them at length. They know the signs and are able to ask the tough questions that will allow them to determine how much of a risk the student is under. Often the counselor will need to dig deep to discover the problems the student is facing. This can only be done if counselors have developed a relationship with the student and maintain a safe school environment. During the process, a counselor will not promise confidentiality, as notification of parents is an important part of that process. Students at imminent risk of suicide are never left alone, and often parents will need to come to the school and get the student to a health care provider. Sometimes, after assessing the risk, the counselor will not feel that the student is at imminent risk of suicide. In that case, the counselor will talk with the student about why a teacher or peer might have cause to worry about them and what plans can be made to improve the situation. The counselor documents the meetings and parent notification and reports to the administration as per school protocol. The counselor then reports back to the teacher or staff member who made the initial referral. Although not able to discuss details as per confidentiality guidelines, they are able to let them know that the student has received the help needed and to continue to monitor any behavior that might be another sign of risk.
In the event of a suicide, it is never one person's fault. There is more work to do, there is hope, and there are resources available. The next steps to prepare your school leadership team in addressing suicide prevention includes establishing a plan to include your district leadership. We encourage you to reach out to every student.
When talking to a student about a distressed time, reassure the student that you care about his or her well-being and that help is available. Say to the student, "I really care about you and I'll get you help." If you're a teacher, here's how the team approach works. By referring to the school counselor, psychologist, or administrator, you are getting your student the appropriate help. As a school counselor, I will talk to the student in a safe place and will also contact the parents or legal guardian. Supporting a student with suicidal ideation is difficult work. You may feel nervous, scared, and exhausted. Plan to take care of yourself in positive ways after work. And when the student returns to school, check with the student to see how they're doing. Reinforce to that student that he or she makes a difference in the world just by surviving the hard times.
In the resource section, you will find the protocol for assisting students with suicidal ideation from Southwest Region. If you are a teacher or other school personnel, refer immediately to the school administrator, counselor, school psychologist, or social worker. If you are the designated school personnel for responding to a student with suicidal ideation, follow your district or school plan. If you don't have one, refer to the samples in the resource section.
Please spend some significant time reviewing some of the resources available in front of you. Some examples of these include the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, NAMI Utah, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention Utah Chapter, the Utah Pride Center, and the Jason Foundation.
Educators, you can help students reframe their thinking to be more positive by implementing positive practices in your classroom. Look for opportunities to give specific praise to students. Consider that it takes 4 positives for every 1 negative to maintain an appropriate behavior. Also, you can help out by incorporating strategies that boost student perceptions about themselves. Try asking students to write 3 things that went well each day instead of focusing on what went wrong. You know, we often feel better when we can provide a service to someone else. So encourage students to do something nice for someone else and then write about it. Why not try calling home to say something positive about a student, or even write a note to their parents? When you look for the good in students, you will help them find it in themselves.
As educators and school personnel, we want to create a safe environment where students can feel a sense of belonging and are comfortable with open communication. As an educational community, we hope that you will have excellent communication with your students. As a teacher in the classroom, you have a unique opportunity to spend a significant amount of time with your students, both interacting and in overhearing peer conversations that I as an administrator may not have. Students may confide suicidal thoughts through writing, journal entries, artwork, speaking out in class, or even speaking to you privately. Your educator ethics and the state law guide you to make appropriate referrals. The expectation for my faculty is building bridges to communication, ensuring what goes on in the classroom and school-wide establishes and maintains a stimulating, caring, and supportive climate. Stimulating, caring, and supportive classrooms do more than motivate learning of a subject matter and academic skills. They provide conditions for social and emotional learning.
During this introduction to suicide prevention, we have given Utah statistics, information, and resources to increase awareness of how important you are in the life of your students. You are an important safeguard to help prevent suicide in our youth. We hope that you will continue your professional development by collaborating with your school team, district leadership, and community partners in developing your understanding of suicide prevention. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this introductory training.
During the remainder of this seminar, your school administrators are going to provide you with more information that clearly identifies the warning signs of suicide and gives you a list of resources in your community. I believe you can help us. I believe schools can help you. We are stronger than ever when we work together. I am committed to turning the tragedies of the past into a foundation for a better future. I ask for your support, for your school, for your community, and for your child.